Hey everyone, hi, welcome back to my channel. I'm Shelly and today I'm going to be talking to you about the best books and the worst books that I've read so far this year, along with some other questions. So here's what happened today. Today I sat down and I filmed a very long video. It was my wrap-up video for September, in which September was the month I challenged myself to read 30 books in 30 days, and I did complete that goal. Yay! But what I didn't complete very well was a wrap-up video. I filmed it and I really didn't like it at all, and so I'm gonna try again, but today I wanted to still sit down and talk to you all, and so instead I was like, I'm gonna do Britta Bowler's 3/4 of the year check-in tag, essentially. And she has a couple of categories. You can look at the categories down below, in which I will be answering, you know, the questions. They're not really questions, but the prompts, essentially. And yeah, I'm really excited. It's a really nice to have these quarterly check-ins to reflect on what I've been reading so far and what's been my best book, what's been the worst book, the weirdest book, and so on and so forth. Now, Britta said that this is a tag, but I took it as she tagged everybody, and for anybody to do it, anybody who wants to do it ought to do it. So with that, I'm just gonna jump right in. So her first question is the best novel I've read so far. The best novel, I have two. The first one is in terms of writing and character. This author is just a master with language and with sentence structure. I mean, not a dangling participle is out of place with this woman's writing. It's just so good, and she also tells just a fantastic story with one of my favorite characters of all time. So that would be The House of Mirth by Edith Wharton. Now, Edith Wharton tells the story of Lily Bart, who comes from more meager means, but her family has been rubbing elbows with New York's elite for quite a long time. And so when Lily Bart comes of age and when she's trying to marry, she seems to kind of always flub it up for herself. And she's really in the later season of her life. Now, I think she's like under 30, so I was like, oh. You know, but in this society, she's getting up there in age, and she's trying to hide the fact that she doesn't have any money, and she really thinks that she can kind of keep up with the Joneses, but the Joneses turn out to be quite cruel. This is essentially like her fall from grace, and it is brutal, it is vicious, and it's just a fantastically told story. Really interesting, really good, and Edith Wharton's prose work is gorgeous. I mean, just gorgeous. I read this with every fiber of my being. I read this so hard. I just loved it. I mean, it was just so good, and I'm going to be reading my next Edith Wharton book this month, so just a highly successful read for me, and yeah, I still think about this book. I still think about it today. So I said that I had two books for this like best novel category. The House of Mirth is definitely one that falls under just immaculate writing. It's so beautiful. It's so good. But my next book is gonna be wonderful just in terms of plot. Like, I am not a plot-driven reader in the slightest. So a lot of times the plot falls to the background as I really focus on characters and really work to get engaged in their struggle, and that's what I read for. But this book's plot was just wow. I mean, it was really good, and it was a slow clap all the way to the end. So fantastic. And that is The Luminaries by Eleanor Catton. Okay, here we go. This is set in New Zealand's gold rush in 1866, and there has been a murder that takes place. And I couldn't even sum up the plot for you because it is just so intricate. But basically, this group gets together and they're trying to figure out like who killed the person that was murdered and what happened to the gold. I thought it was just so well done, and in terms of plotting, I don't even know how Eleanor Catton did it. It's so good. It plays around with like the lunar cycles, that has a part in it, and even like page length, it starts with, you know, it starts like the first section is the longest, and then it gradually gets shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter, and that was well plotted out. I mean, the whole thing was like structurally and plot, in terms of plot, it was one of just the most like delicious experiences. Really, really, really good, and oh, I just loved it. I love this book. All right, next question. Favorite character? That, hands down, I mean, when I think about this character, she puts a smile on my face, okay? And that is the girl with the dragon tattoo, Lisbeth Salander. She is just awesome. So if you haven't read these books, Lisbeth Salander pairs up with Michael Bloomfest, who is a reporter who's fallen from grace in society, and he is put on like a murder investigation to figure out what happened to a family years and years ago. And Lisbeth Salander gets really like put, is it Salander or Salinger? Oh, I had a moment, y'all. So Lisbeth Salander, she gets tied up in this mix, and she's really good with computers. She definitely lives by her own rules, and she is a badass. She falls into this category of girls who hurt boys who hurt girls, and even that line is repeated in these books. And so who she goes after are guys that have been really nasty to women, like real nasty. And she has her own sense of justice, and it is quite satisfying, I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, I am not one for violence. I'm not one to read anything sort of scary. I don't like murder mysteries or anything like that. However, when it came to Lisbeth Salander and the way that she approaches justice towards these men, I was just like, yeah, I love every moment of it. It was just so good, so good, and she definitely stands out as just a great character. Can you shut my door, zombies? Hey zombies, can you shut my door?
Oh yeah.
Thank you, zombies. Got a few zombies running around here. That's just how it goes in my household. Okay, the next question is the best nonfiction book. That hands down goes to a book that I've already talked about, so I'm going to choose another one, but I will mention it, and that is A Room of One's Own by Virginia Woolf. This is an essay in which Virginia Woolf basically talks about what it means to be a woman and a writer, and she breaks down those two words and thinks about them and takes you through her thought process, and it is brilliant. It's a slim little work, and a genius work, and one that I think definitely set in motion a lot of thinking that feminists have today. She just articulated things that in the depths of me I knew was true, but seeing them on the page was just so eye-opening. So this is definitely the best nonfiction book, but since I've already talked about that, and I just talked about it right now again, I'm going to choose the next one, which is Annie Dillard's Pilgrim at Tinker Creek. Now, I really like Annie Dillard. I actually read another book of hers this month, The Writing Life. That didn't work out so well, but this one worked out really well, and y'all know why? Because she talks about bugs. I had no idea that insects were so fascinating. Well, I kind of did, but like when she is just articulating it, when she is just taking you through to those observations as she is talking about praying mantises, I was just here for it. I just loved it, and I loved her approach to the bugs and to nature and her meditations. I just loved it. I love this. Yeah, and this stands out as just a fantastic read, and has really kind of it's set me in motion, in my reading life in motion, to think about more bugs, to read more about bugs, and yeah, I'm just so fascinated by them, okay? I'm just so fascinated. Okay, the next question is the weirdest book. The weirdest book I read this year is definitely Comfort Me with Apples by Catherynne M Valente. Now, I heard about this book from Scott and Nell, separate channels now, but Nell did a single book review on this, and she was like, I just want somebody to read it so I can discuss it with them. And Scott also said this book was great, and I read it, and it was really weird, y'all. It was really weird. I'm gonna say, because it's so short, it's a very, very short book. It's probably a novella. It's only 103 pages, just a tiny little thing. And it starts off with everything being eerily perfect. And Sophia lives in this house and everything is perfect. And things in reality maybe aren't as perfect as everything seems. It's just, and it gets weird. It gets real weird. But yeah, it was really an interesting book. And Nell, if you want to discuss it, then let me know, or anybody else who's read this. It's a strange one, y'all. All right, the next question is biggest surprise. That is gonna go to Sharon Olds' Stag's Leap. This is a poetry collection. I had heard about Sharon Olds and I had no idea what I was getting myself into. This is the story of her divorce, and she is very intentional about her reflection on what that marriage meant to her, who he meant to her, and who she was next to him in this marriage and in life. And she approaches it with brutal honesty, and it's in a way where I feel like she's confessing, because she is a confessional poet, but she's doing it not in a way where I felt like she was just dumping on me, like, oh, you're making me carry this burden with you. No, I felt like she was talking like so honestly, and that she really approached this with a lot of integrity, and she doesn't shy away from the hard stuff, and every word, every phrase was very intentional. And when I opened this, I almost was in awe of her words. I don't know how else to put it. It felt like a whirlwind, and I was being sucked up into it. And the more I spent in this book, the deeper I went in. I mean, it was just so good. And then it ended, and I was just like, I can't believe I just read that. I can't believe I just read that. And it was truly a unique experience. And I have since read another book by Sharon Olds and really enjoyed it. But I didn't know what I was getting myself into when I picked this up, and it was just definitely the biggest surprise of the year so far. The next prompt is the biggest disappointment of the year, and that is gonna go to, oh gosh, I feel really bad saying this, but The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis. Okay, so I read this as a kid, and I remember really liking it. And then I got back into this book, and the first like 5 or 6 chapters, the first like third of the book was everything I remembered it being: charming, warm, sweet, you know, the sense of adventure, the sense of like truly falling into another world, which the children do. And I was really here for it. And then I just really was understanding that this book is a metaphor for the Christian belief of Christ dying on the cross and redemption, but it was so heavy-handed. It was like barely veiled, and to me, it really reinforced certain gendered stereotypes that I just had a really hard time getting behind. And when I revisited this as an adult a few months ago, it didn't have the same magic. Like, I could see everything that C.S. Lewis was doing. And I read a good amount of children's literature. And, you know, if it's a great children's book, it's going to be great at whatever age you read it at, because it's fantastic. The story is amazing. And to me, it was just so disappointing, y'all. Like, it was just so not what I wanted it to be. I thought that the metaphor, which I know, like this redemption metaphor, I know it's there, but I thought it was just a little more subtle, a little more just like well done, and it wasn't. It really wasn't. Because of that, it felt like there was like messaging that I was like swallowing as I was reading this, and I was just not here for it. It put a really sour taste in my mouth for C.S. Lewis and for this series. Yeah, and I was going to continue on with this series, but I've read 2 now in the last 2 or 3 years, and I just don't want to. So yeah, definitely my biggest disappointment of the year. Okay, so the worst book. All right, the worst book I have here is, oh gosh, okay, it's going to be Olympus by Rachel Smythe. So I saw this as the #1, like the Goodreads winner for graphic novels for last year. So Goodreads voters voted this as their #1. And I was recently at a bookstore and I was talking with the manager and I was talking about what I like reading. I mean, this is brief. Like, we did not go over all the things that I like to read. But what came out of my mouth was like, oh yeah, I read, the Odyssey this year, and and so the manager of this bookstore was like, oh, he caught on to the fact that I really liked books about Greek gods and goddesses, and suggested this book. And then I was like, I don't buy graphic novels because they're quick reads and they tend to be really expensive. So I got this from my library and I read it and I really didn't like it. So this is like retellings of Greek myths, but they're not even retellings. It's like Rachel Smythe takes the characters in Greek lore and decides to tell a very strange story about like two lovers that shouldn't be together, and their turmoil of not being together, and drama ensues. That's essentially what it's about. But it's very anti-feminist. Like, a lot of the retellings that are coming out now are very feminist forward. They're giving females a lot of power. And so even as I was reading, I was like, okay, but she's using like these the Greeks, and the Greeks, they weren't very nice to women, so that's okay. But like, I don't know, I just didn't want to give her a pass on that. And I was like, just the women were just all gaga about the men, and the women were extremely mean to each other, very, very mean to each other, very jealous of one another. And this ended up being like also very sexualized. The characters in the book, especially the women, were extremely sexualized. The drawings were just a lot. It was a lot. It was a very voluptuous woman. And that's also another pet peeve of mine in graphic novels, is that like women's bodies are done in a way that are so unrealistic and so depicted like as sex objects basically, and I do not stand for that. And on top of that, I don't think she's actually a very good artist, because a lot of times the only reason you can tell the difference between one character and another isn't her art. It is because the color changes, because everyone looks the same, including all of the female bodies. Yeah, and I kept on trying to like give her a pass, because I'm like, I know she's taking the ancient Greeks, and she's taking like the ancient Greeks, and it was a different time and all of that. But ultimately it read like a 50 Shades of Grey graphic novel almost. It was just not good. It was bad. It was real bad. And I was shocked. I was shocked that this won, both because I thought the art was rather poor and the storytelling was atrocious. Additionally, in terms of the world and the world building, I was like, maybe she's going to like really kind of develop the world. And I felt like you kind of had to know what the world was about in order to appreciate some of the things that she's doing. And I am not like the best at the ancient Greeks and knowing what's going on in that world. And I thought she had this wonderful opportunity to build something grand and beautiful and intricate and like refreshing, like taking the Greeks and like refreshing it and giving us something really cool and really amazing. That didn't happen. And I went in not actually with a ton of expectations, but as I was reading, I was like, she is drawing women very sexy. And then I was like, okay, the women are really mean to each other. And then I was like, why do all the women look the same? Why do all the men look the same? Why are we not getting much world building, including even in her imagery? And I was just like, this book, and I had thought about DNFing it, which is do not finishing it, but I just decided to read through to the end, because I really was like, maybe something will happen. Maybe I'll feel good about this. And it just made me feel really icky. And then it made me feel even worse, because I was like, I think this book is really well loved. So yeah, on that note, cannot recommend this. No. But yeah, anyways, that's it from me. I'm not gonna actually tag anybody, because I think everybody is tagged. If you want to do this, then please do it. It's a great way to sort of check in about your reading. If you don't have a channel, you can check in with me in the comments down below, just with whatever question you want to answer, because I think these are all great questions, and just a great way to reflect on what's been going on this past year. It's been fun. So yeah, anyways, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you all in my next one. Bye, guys.